Hello, hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Please follow us, okay? We're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on X, and we're on major podcasting platform. I'm Irene Lyakovetsky. I speak with fascinating people in tech, and I'm so grateful to Dr. Lisa Palmer joining me today. How are you, Lisa?
It is wonderful to be here, Irene. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's my day. It's my pleasure because you see, I am learning about AI. Okay. I am diving deep and I'm practicing myself and I'm adapting new tools and I'm as overwhelmed as many of my audience members. Okay. So could you please maybe shed some light? What point in time you think we're in terms of we see what's available, right? We want to adapt. We want to innovate wherever we are in big organizations and a solopreneur like myself and people somewhere in between startups and people who are not close to technology at all, right? But at the same time, could you give us some overview? Where do you think we are right now?
Many people feel frozen, that there's so much potential. They do feel overwhelmed, to use your word. And so the first thing I would say is start with one thing. Just do one thing. Let's start there. And don't let the overwhelm stop you from embracing and learning and growing to work in partnership with AI. And I think that that is so important because the future is all about augmenting fabulous human expertise with the superpowers of artificial intelligence. It's not about one or the other. It's really about superpowering our human potential with the power of artificial intelligence.
That's a big promise. That's a big promise,
Mhm.
Lisa. So we titled our talk today. We're gonna blend in AI and processes. Okay, I have process background. I love your recent post about people, process, technology. Right?
Mhm.
How well we coexist, you think, and why AI isn't the problem, but maybe your process is.
It's so true. We are sometimes people over rotate towards one of the three things on that triangle. So, what I want to point out about the people, process, and technology triangle is that this is old and tried and true. And so, for those people that do feel overwhelmed or feel like it's completely new, I want to reassure you we're not in completely new space here. We're not in uncharted waters. So, what we want to do is work to keep that triangle in balance. Think about the impacts on our people. Think about how do we leverage process in this really smart way by engaging technology. And so, if your processes are already broken, the last thing that you want to do is automate your processes with any kind of technology, let alone with artificial intelligence. So, what we want to do instead is focus on what are the outcomes? What is the business value that we're trying to create? Get crystal clear what the value that we're trying to create or the mission that we're trying to achieve. And then let's thoughtfully design using our people and using smart process design what we can do and what we can superpower in that, leveraging artificial intelligence.
Where do you think, okay, many organizations fail, okay? Because we've seen some disillusionment, all
Mm.
right? We've seen some investment made and we've seen some cooling down initiatives, okay? And it's going up and down. And of course, there's big hype in the technology, in what we're able to achieve today, okay? At the same time, as a responsible business leader, all right, not everyone investing right now, they want to see results. So where do you see teams and organizations fail and what can they do about it?
The biggest problem is that people pick projects to pursue with artificial intelligence that are not artificial intelligence projects. So, as much as 80% of efforts that have had AI monies assigned to them and pursued fail to meet business expectations. And the number one rationale for that, the number one reason behind that is that they picked projects that are simply not a good fit for artificial intelligence. So the very first thing you have to do is get that laser focus on creating value for your organization. I call it no toy AI, no shiny AI. We're only going to take on projects that we know are going to tangibly drive value. And then we're going to do that. We're going to do that by ensuring that the projects that we pick are well aligned with the capabilities of artificial intelligence. So, for example, if you have a data and analytics project, use classic data and analytics. Don't try to apply some high-end artificial intelligence to the wrong application.
You know, that's really pearls of wisdom. Okay, we have to be reminding people all the time, because looks like they're applying wrong tools to their own problem, and then disillusionment come, right, and problems come after, right? So could you please share, I love asking my guests about disaster scenarios, okay, things that went wrong and things that possibly could have been avoided, for instance.
Well, one of the cautionary tales that I like to talk about is an organization who uses artificial intelligence to generative AI, to be very specific, in their primary business, because their business is all about generating audio, generating video. And as part of that, they got very enamored with this idea of creating creating celebrity videos, but it didn't have anything to do with their actual core business. It was kind of fun and cool. And so they replicated some famous celebrities and made fun demos of what was possible, but it didn't actually drive value for their core business. They got distracted by what some of the fun things were that they could do with the technology, and they invested millions of dollars in this pursuit of capabilities that wasn't driving any revenue or value for their business. So it was close, and this is the thing that distracts people. It was really close to their core business. It seemed like it could be interesting, but they didn't ground it in metrics. Like, what are the sales that we're going to drive from this? What is the operational efficiency that we could drive from this? For example, they didn't ground it in metrics that were going to demonstrate that they were actually creating return on investment. So it was that tangential. It was so close to their core business that they just jumped at it and went and did it and spent a lot of money, and it unfortunately didn't net them anything positive.
Thank you for sharing this. Exactly. You know, looks like we all seen or kind of almost touched that area, that disastrous scenario, okay? Because it's so shiny and it's so inviting. It's so easy, right? The problem is the entry barrier so low now, right, that you can start playing immediately. Thing is, where do you see those efficiencies and operational effectiveness, okay, will be seen, because seem to be AI applied to a lot of what you're saying, marketing, content creation, fun stuff, okay, but yet I don't see capitalization in a lot of projects which are not in that area. So what do you think?
It's really important to think about the metrics. How are you going to measure success? When you look back on this effort, are you going to have something that indicates that you have moved the needle for your business? I do want to give one caveat for this, that in the artificial intelligence projects initiative space, I encourage people to think about learning. You've got to use an agile development methodology. And that means that you scope projects really small, like MVP size small, and then you learn, iterate on an AI project. Please don't try to follow old school waterfall projects that are kind of slow and build on each other. That doesn't work in this space. So what you can do is establish those metrics that are going to be associated with each one of those little MVPs. Let's get some success, because what happens when you get a success and you get measurable success is it creates momentum. It creates what I call the AI performance flywheel. And that momentum, every one of those positive ROI generating use cases encourages your organization to continue building and growing.
Fantastic, fantastic. I still want to, probe a little further on AI myths. Okay. We
Yeah.
read a lot about it, right? What it is and what it is not, especially, let's say, generative AI, which is very hot right now, right? There are numerous use cases, fantastic tools, fantastic tutorials now I see everywhere, right? And at the same time, any myth that you would think we could debunk today?
Well, the first thing is that you cannot accept what a generative AI tool gives you as 100% accurate. The accuracy of these tools is well known to not be high. I've seen accuracy rates as low as the near 60%. So if you are using classic generative AI tools without additional guardrails. And there are lots of things that you can do to improve that accuracy. But know that as a consumer, if you're using a generative AI tool, you've got to apply your human expertise to the results that come from those tools in order to be sure that what you're creating is high value, is high quality. So the number one myth is that you can just ask the generative AI, let's take a large language model chatbot, for example. You can just ask that chatbot a question and then just copy and paste that answer out. And wow, you saved all this time and you've been super productive. And it's highly likely, as much as 40% likely, that what you have just generated is inaccurate in either small or large ways. So you certainly do not want to have your brand, whether it's a personal brand or a business brand, associated with that low quality. So you cannot avoid the use of human expertise in partnership with these fantastic tools.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you brought it up. Okay, let's go back to people. Okay, we touched a little bit on processes. Okay, but guess what? People work on processes. People create processes, even if they're not documented. Where the informal, they just the way we do business. Okay, so what do you think that the good kind of thinking in terms of process that we've been using all the time for as long as I remember in my organization, it's not necessarily the way you want to continue. Forget about AI, what you mentioned, right? It's about how do you optimize first before you become all this automated and efficient. Because if you automate the wrong thing, that's a disaster.
Well, from a people perspective, I encourage you to do this. As an individual person, stop yourself in the middle of the day and say, you're in the middle of a task that you've done a million times throughout your career. You have to stop yourself and say, what is a better way that I can do this in partnership with AI? And the hardest thing to do is to do that with our own mindset, to break our own habits, to learn to do things differently. I, for example, have a completely different process today for creating a presentation than I had for 25 years. I did presentations in the exact same way. And today, instead of pulling up a blank presentation and starting and building out my agenda and building out slide by slide, instead I go directly to artificial intelligence tools and I start to brainstorm with those tools, and I tell it, here's my audience, here's the point that I'm trying to get across, here are some of the concerns I want to make sure we address, and I give it all of this fantastic context. I actually have one tool that I love in this pursuit called gamma.app, and I will go out and give it all this context and then turn the AI loose to come up with, and it will create an entire presentation for me in seconds. And then I do that exact same thing and I create about 10 different versions. I just turn the AI loose with all of that information I've given it. And it is a fantastic brainstorming tool. So now I've got 50, 60, 80, 100 different slides that have been created within less than 5 minutes that really serve as brain food for me to go and look at. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's a good one. That's a good one. And then I'll pull out different slides, edit those slides, and come up with content that really is representative of what I'm trying to get to, but is enriched by this deep conversation and brainstorming effort that I've undertaken with the tools.
Amazing. Thank you for this example. My next question was, how do you incorporate AI in the workflow? Yeah. And you already answered that. This is amazing example because everyone can picture themselves, right? When you use the tool, it's not about replacing yourself, okay? We don't want to do that because you said the results are not accurate 100%, right? You mentioned how many iterations, how much time. You're much more productive, I'm sure, but you still you, right? And through your presentation, your personality and your experience shines. So could you touch a little bit about how to make AI a really helpful assistant and not necessarily this standardized, polished look that we all becoming all the same thing?
If you use a generic LLM, I often tell people, if the content that you're creating from partnering with generative AI is boring, then you're a boring conversationalist. So what I mean by that is that you have got to engage in a conversation. So imagine that you walk into a party and somebody is standing there talking to you, and all that you do is nod occasionally, give it a little, give them one little snippet back and forth. The conversation that you're going to have with that person is not going to be very engaging for either of you. That's exactly what happens when we partner with generative AI tools. The more context, the more engaging, the more of you that you share with the tool, the better that it's going to be able to partner with you and return that high quality, interesting feedback to you. So think about yourself as having a conversation with really interesting partners, and then give it as much context as possible. And one hack I will share is that I love frameworks. And so these tools work at their absolute best when they have the most context. So what can happen if you do something really simple, like tell the tool, I am going to build a SWOT analysis, for example, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. I want you to apply that framework in our conversation. And so what happens when you give it a framework like that is every word that has ever been written and that language model is trained on, thousands and thousands of words about SWOT analysis and all the times it has been used, all the research that's been done with it, etc. You're giving it thousands of words of context all at once by simply asking it to call on that SWOT framework and best practices around it.
It is really amazing. It's really amazing. To those who are listening to us right now, pay attention, please. Follow Dr. Lisa Palmer. I'm a huge fan on LinkedIn. Where else? Where else, Lisa? I know you have a website, right? So please, let's point our listeners to.
I do. drlisa.ai is our website. You can also follow me on YouTube as well. Those are my favorite channels.
Beautiful. We'll include the links. We'll include links in the video for sure. We are learning. We are exchanging our wisdom. We're exchanging our learnings. And by the way, it's all evolving. Okay. Maybe tomorrow you will get another tool. But what I'm sure, yes. Dr. Lisa, is that guess what? Your approach is not going to change in terms of it's you and it's your original thinking and my authentic accent. Okay. In the next platform I choose. Okay. But hopefully people will find us relatable and they find our conversation helpful. So in day-to-day, where do you see your colleague, your peer, maybe your clients, okay, really achieving fantastic results? Okay, some maybe, exciting scenarios, some fantastic success stories maybe.
So I'll give you one really fun example working with a Major League Sports franchise, and they are using a large language model to power a full-sized hologram to greet their fans as they walk into their stadium. And that language model is going to be powered and trained on very specific information about their team, about the stadium, where they can find food, whatever your questions might be, to make your fan experience really engaging and interesting. And it's full-size hologram powered in the background by an LLM.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I hear a lot about retail or maybe entertainment examples, right? I guess companies can achieve a lot, but let me ask you about skills and expertise here. Okay. Because as we mentioned, the entry barrier is low right now, right? You
Yes.
don't need to become a PhD in AI to start using these tools. And the need is so high that actually company hiring and paying a lot for those who already can claim, right, the convincing skills and capabilities. So what do you think is most important today, and which skills do you think we would need in in the near future?
The number one thing that you can bring to the table is your willingness to embrace change, your willingness to lead through this evolution that we are facing right now. So when I talk to my enterprise clients, and I work with, Fortune 500 firms, and what we talk about is looking for characteristics in people that, and because many of there's so much need for talent in the workplace around artificial intelligence, that the number of people that we need with these skills does not exist today. So it's all about identifying those individuals that have the right characteristics to become fantastic in the artificial intelligence space. And I actually have on my blog, on drlisa.ai, I have a list of jobs that are coming, that are being created by artificial intelligence. I have a list of characteristics that enterprises should be looking for in their internal people to be able to help to upskill those people. Let's give them the tools that they need, based off of these fantastic personal characteristics. You just simply need to upskill to get to the place where you are just absolutely indispensable.
Fantastic, fantastic. And what about larger companies, enterprises you mentioned, okay, where teams going through transformation, and maybe a few years it was digital transformation, which became cliche. Some companies is not even there yet as we speak, but at the same time, any AI initiative in terms of wide adoption and transformation, what do you see out there? What kind of advice leaders could benefit from?
Well, the first thing is that there's a lot of angst in the market about layoffs. And this is, I just had a long conversation on LinkedIn with someone about this the other day, that what we're seeing here happen is not brand new. We have seen this happen over and over again in history. I want to point to when remote process automation first came out. We saw massive layoffs across many industries. And then what happens is, very quickly they realize, this technology needs human oversight. This technology needs human partnership. And the return, they start hiring back. However, they don't hire back in most cases the same people who were laid off. They're looking for people to hire back that have embraced the change that's happening in the market. So if you have a closed mindset, if you're not a growth minded thinker, it's going to be very difficult to get back into the workplace. So what I tell people from a large enterprise perspective is, it's highly likely you are going to over pivot, you are going to over automate, it's going to create pain. You're going to have customer satisfaction issues, you're going to have regulatory compliance issues. So if you over rotate too soon, that's what will happen. History has proven this to us over and over again. We're not in new territory with regard to that. But if you choose to do that, you need a very specific plan about the type of people that you want to hire back. And even if those individuals don't already have the deep AI expertise that you do want to be hiring back for those desired characteristics.
I know people looking, and it doesn't matter if they are recent college graduates or people picking career or people mid career. Okay, everyone thinking about it, and depends on their outlook to life, right? They have their own answers, optimist, pessimist, and I like the saying that optimist, it's that one. No, that one that says it could be worse, right? Pessimist says it cannot be worse, and optimist says no, it could be worse. So, so that said, absolutely. So, what do you think is happening in terms of the use cases? Okay, any new shiny examples in the industries that maybe some of the enterprise clients enjoying right now?
Well, there are, some of the most common use cases are in customer service. They are in the sales space, in market materials creation. In all of these examples, the people that are doing it really well are offloading the rote, boring tasks, the not customer impacting tasks, and they are giving that time that's recovered back to their fabulous human staff for them to be able to do deeper dive work, be more engaged, doing more interesting work. So I do have clients who have over rotated, they've over automated, and they're having customer service challenges and issues with that. I also have seen many examples of organizations who have thoughtfully designed their people, process, and technology triangle so that they are very specifically keeping humans in the loop in the areas where it's going to create the most value.
I don't hear a lot about AI helping with strategies. Okay, I read about it. It's a very interesting example. Okay, when you can sort of think about your next pivot. Okay, it's for startups or for next innovation initiatives as an enterprise, as an organization. Okay, do you see this happening, or it's still kind of people most relying on their intuition, on their experiences, and really not using AI for these purposes yet?
At the board level, I'm definitely not seeing heavy use of artificial intelligence yet. I just last week met with a board of directors for a hospital system that their CIO actually brought the idea forward to them that they needed to be talking about and thinking about artificial intelligence because the board hadn't had any interest or made any overtures toward doing that prior to the CIO introducing it. So at the board level, I do see a pretty wide span of this. Some of the really forward-thinking boards have been pushing this for well over 2 years. Those that have those that are more in that laggard space, some of them aren't talking about it at all yet. The interesting thing about the use of AI for strategy is most of the people who are using it will not admit that they are using it for strategy. So it's happening more than you think, particularly at the executive level and at the director, that kind of first line underneath our officers level. However, most of them that are doing it are not being really transparent about the fact that they are.
How interesting. This brings me to another thought about, bring your AI to work. I read somewhere, and I know people using tools that are not necessarily approved yet, okay, but they're so productive that they love it, and they're going through the trouble and risks only to bring their own AI to work. What do you think about that? Will it be more, I don't know, broadly, what is it used going forward?
This is definitely happening. So if you reflect back to when bring your own device to work
Yep.
first became a problem, we're seeing this in the extreme level for bring your own AI. It's BYOAI, literally has its own term. So yes, this is happening a lot. This is why it is so critical. I actually have executive leaders who tell me, oh, no one here is using artificial intelligence. We don't allow that. And I chuckle a bit inside because that the statistics tell us that that is not accurate. So as many as 40% of enterprises have a publicly stated policy that they will not use artificial intelligence. But the workforce numbers demonstrate that 82% of knowledge workers are using AI in some way, shape, or form. So the numbers largely do not line up to support their belief that their employees are not using it. This is why it's so important to have a stated policy and to educate your people about what not to put in consumer facing tools. So remember, if you're using a tool that you don't pay for, then you are the product. That means anything you put into it, any data that you put into it, they're capturing that data and they're using it for their purposes. So if you're choosing to use artificial intelligence for for your company's business, and you leak intellectual property, customer records, HIPAA records, whatever the case may be, you are going to be liable for that. And most likely, these are fireable offenses in most organizations. So know what is safe to share, know what is not safe to share, in your own bring your own AI to work efforts.
Absolutely. And it's a message to the leaders, okay, responsible for AI adoption. If they're in denial, all right, like you mentioned earlier, and people already using and breaking the barriers and already probably violating some of their own company policies, okay, it's time to revisit. What would be your message to those leaders, how to sort of bring the reality that these capabilities are available to everyone, right, at the same time using them in safe and guardrailed way?
Yes, you have to embrace the fact that you are probably not correct in your assumption that none of your employees are using artificial intelligence, that the statistics tell us otherwise. So please, first of all, adjust your mindset. Your staff are using artificial intelligence. The other thing is that your vendor products, so if you buy any products that you bring into your environment, whether it is SaaS-based products, any of these tools that we bring in, most vendors have already embedded artificial intelligence in their vendor products as well. So believing that you're not using AI is wildly inaccurate, and it's very dangerous to your organization to have that delusional belief. So please make sure that you are educating your people about what is safe and not safe to share in these tools. Think about vendor management and making sure that you're asking questions in your vendor process. What kinds of AI are they using? What guardrails are they using? How are they avoiding bias? How are they making sure that you're adhering to regulatory guidelines and many other things? So please, as a leader, you've got to adjust your mindset and embrace this reality.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Lisa. Wow, time is flying. Okay, I'm enjoying this conversation immensely. In conclusion, could you please maybe finish with a few takeaways we want to finish this conversation with?
And embrace artificial intelligence. I just made a post earlier today about the fact that some industries are going to be impacted more quickly than others. And if you happen to live in one of those industries, you really need to make sure that you're embracing it quickly. If you work in professional services, if you have an analyst or research firm, consulting, IT services, these organizations are being impacted already today, and your competitive capabilities are directly at risk if you're not embracing this. Others are financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, there's a list. So you really need to make sure that you understand the risk profile for your industry and for your organization specifically with regard to disruption that is coming so fast by organizations that are sitting out there waiting to take market share from you. So please be really thoughtful about your strategy around artificial intelligence. Embrace it. At the individual employee level, learn, learn, learn. You need to be upskilling yourself. If you are not taking your own upskilling seriously, your employability is declining every day that passes. So please take this as your individual call to action, whether you're an individual employee, a director, a company officer, a board director. Every one of us are being impacted by artificial intelligence, and we all need to be upskilling.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, so very much. Thank you for your time. I appreciate this.
It's been my absolute pleasure.